and welcome to GTM's Tax Automation series on OneSource tax provision functionality. Today, we're going to be talking about classes and how to restrict them for data entry within OneSource tax provision. So let's jump right in. So selecting our tax provision tile, the class functionality exists in the administration area under your manage data options. So we're going to go into classes and subclasses. And as you know, when you create a class, you assign the class to a data set and also to a specific role. So I'm going to take a look at let's just filter here to my current year deferred only class. Okay. Right now, this role, this class is only assigned to one role. It's assigned to the administrator role. But if we wanted, we could assign it to all of our roles. So this is also another way to restrict using classes within the software. You can bring it down to the level that only particular user groups are allowed to see a particular class. And you can also restrict the data sets because classes are also assigned to data sets. So the other area I wanted to talk to you about today is what we call component types. And component types are all of your pieces, your pre-tax book income, your your temporary differences, your tax adjustments, payables, etc. So because I'm working in a current year deferred only, obviously this class is meant to be used for the deferreds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to move out all things that do not relate to the deferreds. So tax adjustments, perms, book trial balances, I'm going to transfer those out. So the only thing I'm leaving now will be these components that are temporary in nature for use. Now, if you notice, each one by default has a data entry rule of activity, deferred, and balance sheet. For this particular temporary difference, I have just already gone ahead and selected just the deferred. And I have unchecked the boxes for the activity and the balance sheet because this is a deferred only class. So I want to restrict entry so that no data can be loaded to the activity or the balance sheet only options. And if you notice that when I did that, there is a save. This is one of the few screens that kind of has a double save in it. You will need to save here and then also save your changes in this area as well. So as you can see, my component types went from 14 down to 6 because I moved those non-temporary difference related items over to the left side of the screen. Now I'm going to go into the review and edit area to show you what that looks like. I'm going to select temporary differences and I'm going to attempt to add one. Let's pick unit 480, federal. And let's go pick, let's see. Let's do restricted stock. Scroll over here. I'm going to select the current year deferred only adjustment. And if you notice, the activity column and the balance sheet only columns have been grayed out or they aren't shaded blue for entry. The only one that is available for entry is the deferred only column. I do want to bring your attention to the beginning balance column as well, because I am currently in the system in an administrator role and the beginning balance is open and it's always open to the administrator role. For any of your other user groups, the beginning balance can be locked to restrict access to this particular column. I'm going to jump out of here and go into one of our other areas. I'm going to continue without saving. I'm going into the permanent difference area. And that's one of the areas that we took away the ability to actually enter anything on that particular class. So I'm going to try to put in something else. And if you notice when I come into the class area, that current year deferred only class does not even exist within the drop-down area for me to be able to select that. And that's because I took the option away in that administration area. I'm going to jump into an Excel spreadsheet here because if you've got a lot of classes that you want to do this restriction on, it can become, a bit unwieldy if you're trying to do it manually. So this is one of the areas that you can import the changes on. So from your administration area, you would export the categories and you would go to the classes to components sheet to make the changes. And here I've shown you what I did in the software manually. So I have taken away by default, as you can see, all of these different items are kind of set up with the ability to enter on the temporary differences anyway, activity, deferred, and balance sheet only. So I've simply typed in a D to indicate that I only want entry in the deferred only columns. And actually down here, we've got something for PPA that's been set up as a balance sheet only. Now, the areas that I took away those component types for, PTBI, perm diffs, tax adjustments, payable transactions, I'm showing them as blank here on this particular file. However, I do want to point out that when you import this file back in, those changes will not take because you cannot remove access where you're taking away a category or a component type by importing it. So unfortunately for this area, if you want to restrict the ability to have the class show up in the dropdown like I showed on the permanent differences, you're going to have to go back into the software and manually do the shifting of those categories to the left side of the screen for those classes. However, with the remaining components that exist, you will be able to import in the access that you want for this area.